The mission of a local nonprofit is to provide leadership, direction, and integrated resource management for quality services that support the vision of success for children. Coming up on Polk Place, we will talk about what they have in store for 2020. Make sure you stick around. Welcome to Polk Place. I'm your host, Tina Mann, and joining me in the studio today is Marc Hutek, the CEO with Early Learning Coalition, and also Debbie Burdette, who is the Director of Strategic Partnerships with Early Learning Coalition. That's quite the mouthful. Yes. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
As always, I love having you guys here. You do so much for the community. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Early Learning Coalition for those who might not know?
Okay. Well, the Early Learning Coalition is one of 30 coalitions across the state, and we pretty much handle Polk County. But I joke around and kid and say that in many cases we're very similar to like the school district for little kids. But we are a branch of the Florida Department of Education. We're funded through the Office of Early Learning. And primarily we work two main programs: our school readiness program, which provides child care subsidies for low-income families, allowing them to get child care, where we partner with about 350 daycare providers in Polk County. And we also are responsible for all of the VPK programs, the voluntary pre-kindergarten programs, preparing children to enter kindergarten within Polk County.
And what people may not realize is how important early learning is. And when we refer to that, I know every year you come up with a new vision and new goals to move that forward. So why don't you talk to me about what's important to you and what you're thinking?
Okay. Well, thank you. You know, it really is a critical point in a child's life.
Yes.
And one thing that I have learned in my years in Polk County is that there are a lot of folks out there that don't understand that we have the abilities within our own community to change the cycle and the trajectory of many of our families. But it has to start with children. Right. And ultimately what I have found is in working with early learning and working with young children is that there are points in a child's life that when you provide quality learning and when you provide them the path to the development that they need to have, then they run the risk of being much more successful. And that success in turn comes back as a circle to us as adults that are around us every day. And those adults become much more productive with everything from graduating high school and maybe moving on to a college or a post-secondary institution to, you know, becoming successful members of our community, earning a livable wage, you know, developing those social and emotional behaviors and habits that create productive aspects of our community rather than, you know, the ill effects of children maybe that don't get that. So it's a real push for us to make sure that the community really gains a good understanding of how critically important it is. And you know, we work with well over 10,000 kids a year with the Early Learning Coalition, so we know.
That's the thing, is that I don't think any of those things that you just mentioned people directly tie just immediately to early learning. So I know you have a lot of information and research behind what those things are. So tell me about that.
We do. Well, you know, for example, our voluntary pre-kindergarten program, for example, you know, that's that critical age, the year before a child goes to kindergarten. But what you find is that in Polk County alone, for example, about half of the children that show up to kindergarten in Polk County schools are what the state would categorize as not school ready, not kindergarten ready. And that's almost an atrocity when you hear about it. But you start digging a little bit deeper into why it's that way and what's making that occur. And what you find is that, say, in any given year we have 8,000 children that show up to our kindergarten programs in the K-12 system in the public schools. Well, out of that 8,000, not even 5,000 attended a VPK program. Wow. So out of those 5,000 that did attend a VPK program, in many of those cases, what they get from those teachers through the day are really in many cases, all that they get for preparation. You know, so many of our parents are busy and they're strapped with their own requirements of their life and obligations that the children don't get to read. I mean, what we find is even that the average child from a low-income family in Polk County, and the state for that matter, gets about 1.5 hours of quality instruction from a parent a week.
Wow.
Where a child coming from a family that's not low, socioeconomic income family, they run somewhere between 7 to 10 hours of instruction from a parent a week. And what winds up happening is there comes this point in time where we say that children that in many times from some of the poorer families, because the children are oftentimes left alone more often, may end up coming to school in kindergarten at the age of 5, having heard 30 million fewer words over their lifetime.
Wow.
And that is critical because, you know, it's never too early to read and to talk and to start the voice inflections and the understandings, and children learn a lot even if they don't understand what the words are. So it really is critical for that. And in our VPK programs, you know, a lot of people aren't participating in them. And we still have got a push out there, and our organization needs to push this community to say, you know, that kids can't gain knowledge sitting on a couch getting babysit during the day. They need to be in a high quality institution where they're not just learning reading and math skills at a young age, but they're learning how to share, how to get in line, how to wait their turn, how to ask politely, yes, please, no, thank you, all of those kinds of things. How to respect authority.
How to be away from mommy and daddy.
How to be away from mommy and daddy, that's exactly right. And what winds up happening is the children that don't have those experiences come back to create obstacles to their learning when they get to kindergarten. So our VPK programs are really a big focus for us in the upcoming year, and we've just got to make sure that our community understands how relevant they are.
So you were mentioning the number of hours that kids get from their parents. So if they're attending VPK, how many hours a week is that?
Well, an easy way to remember VPK is a standard school year for kindergarten, 8th grade, 12th grade, whatever. A standard school year is 180 school days. And in our VPK program, in a sense, it's funded as a 180-day school day program, but it's 3 hours a day. So a 3-hour day times 180 school days is a 540-hour program, and that's what the state VPK program runs.
That's quite a difference between what you can get from your parents and what you can get from one of these programs.
It is, and it makes a huge difference on just the skilled trade, right, of a VPK teacher and the ability for them to have a state curriculum that shows where they are trying to get them to become. Above and beyond the social emotional skills, which we have certainly learned are every bit as critical.
And on a deeper biological level, I know you've mentioned to me before how critical the early brain development is to these kids, and you were mentioning about, you know, this open window. So why don't you tell me a little bit about the brain development associated with it?
And you're right, because that really means everything to our society. Whether you're talking about workforce development, whether you're talking about work ethic, workplace essential skills, you know, all of that really begins at a very young age. And so often, you know, we'd like to believe that you need to teach children maybe at the age of middle school or high school what good workplace skills are, or what it takes to be successful in the work environment, those soft skills that everybody talks about. But what the data is showing now is that indeed the issues are all formed and in many cases taken care of at a very young age. So the brain develops, right, 80% by the age of 3, 90% by the time a child goes to kindergarten. 90% of that brain is developed by the time they enter kindergarten.
That's why they're so sassy at that age.
Well, that's true, but what we've also found is that of all the hundreds of millions of brain connections that are occurring in those first couple years, that traditionally, I think many folks believe that as your brain develops, that you're either in line with learning those things, or maybe you're running behind and eventually your brain will catch up. And the older you get and the more mature you get, the more you will learn those things. Well, what statistics and data are now telling us is that there's a window. And if you don't get some of those things and you don't learn some of those things and use some of those skills by the time you become 4 or 5, then in many cases those brain cells shut down and you've lost it. Then you spend the rest of your life compensating for what you never learned. And we've got a short video on a side note. We can take just a moment to look at this video. It's only 1.5 minutes, but it is very, very precise in explaining how that works.
In fact, the first 3 years of life are like a big bang for the brain. An explosion of 86 billion neurons connecting to each other over 1 million times a second as babies interact with the world and the people around them. These connections form pathways that wire together different parts of the brain. So many pathways that starting around age 3, the brain hits the brakes and kicks into use it or lose it mode.
There's this kind of inflection point where the connections that have been used a lot get to be stronger and stronger. The connections that aren't used disappear. They're pruned, as people say.
And whether or not the connection is strengthened or dies back is experience dependent, right? It's based on our experiences. So literally, our experiences shape our brains.
Our brains grow faster during the first 5 years of life than they ever will again. And the older we get, the harder it is to change what's there.
This is why this early period is so important. If you miss the right experiences, or if you disrupt those circuits, then you have some weakened foundation that your brain is going to have to deal with for the rest of your life.
So that was all this data is just amazing to me. I mean, sometimes you don't. I mean, I know how the brain works and neural pathways, but it's amazing what you guys are doing.
Well, it's pretty incredible work, because what we do with these young children truly will impact everything from whether or not these children run a good risk of being successful, whether they have the better opportunities of living in poverty and staying in poverty, whether they learn the skills to pull themselves out of situations maybe that their emotions may take over that could lead them in a positive direction or a negative direction. You know, when we see a lot of issues in the community, we often ask ourselves, for example, we've all seen some of the atrocities on TV where something bad maybe has happened. And the question is always, what's wrong with that person? Why would they do that? Right. And, I've really become a buzz to say it's no longer the question, what's wrong with that person, but the question needs to be what's happened to that person. Mm-hmm. Because that's the difference now, with a clearer understanding on why folks do what they do.
So I know you guys get state funding, but you also rely on community partnerships.
Yes, we do.
So Debbie, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It's really and truly comes down to awareness. And that's one thing as we have been out this past year speaking with our local officials, chamber groups, things like that. When we sit down and say, we're with the Early Learning Coalition, do you know what we do? Almost always they say no.
Oh my.
They're not aware of what we do. So then Mark and I, of course, realized, wow, it's all about awareness. So that's where we have to really start. And we've done that. We've done a lot this past year. He and I both have been with the coalition now just a little over a year. So we've done a lot of presentations and we've had a lot of meetings, but there's still a lot to be had. So awareness, of course, is key. It's exciting for us. Mark mentioned there's over 300 different child care providers that we help fund. So it's very exciting when you go to one of these providers and you watch mom and dad, drop their kids off from school, and the kids are excited to go there. You can tell that they love learning when you see that going on, and that's the way it should be. That's the way we want it to be. And as Mark mentioned, with the 300 plus providers that we're trying to help, when parents are able to drop the kids off and the kids are happy, they're able to go on to work and work worry-free, knowing that their kids are being not babysat, but being educated.
Yes.
From the very, very early years. So that's exciting, and that's a message that we're excited to share and help people better understand. The challenge, of course, is to help these community stakeholders understand and really embrace the role that the Early Learning Coalition plays in making all kids school ready. You know, that's a challenge, because you start talking kids to people, and yes, they'll listen a little bit, but it's not just talking about these kids, it's embracing these kids and these families and making sure that they all, not just some kids, but all kids, get that right start into school. We're constantly looking for opportunities to share our mission and vision. So, you know, we've reached out to our mayors, our city officials, our county commissioners, all of that, civic groups, faith-based groups, any opportunity that we can have to present and share our information is certainly what we're after. Our goal for 2020 is really and truly to have meetings and presentations with all of our mayors, with all the city commissioners. Right now, the Early Learning Coalition has, we're located in Lakeland, Winter Haven, and Lake Wales, so we're definitely county-wide. And we really try to make our presence known that way. So, you know, when I talk to folks, I learn, I understand, I'm starting to feel more and more like folks just don't really stop and think about who's taking care of these thousands of kids that he's just spoke about.
Right.
You know, who does that job every day? And with us, our child care providers, they're not babysitters, they're early childhood educators.
Yes.
These kids are our future employees, so it's our job to make sure that we're raising kids and folks and young adults that can step into these roles when they're ready, and that we can retire and know that they're going to keep things going for us. So it just requires good, strong partnerships. So that's what we're after, and we would, I mean, we're really asking, invite us in, let us tell you about it, let us show you, let us watch some of our videos and see our kids firsthand at how they learn once they're dropped off to school every morning.
Well, I'm very glad that PGTV is one of your partners.
Yes,
and
we are
so
very thankful.
We're
Yes.
thankful for your work, and we always enjoy you guys coming out. So thanks for coming today.
Yep.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Early Learning Coalition of Polk County wants you to know that the quality of early education and care significantly influences academic and social development. Their vision is that all children enter school healthy, ready, and eager for lifelong learning with the collaborative support of parents, families, educators, and the community. As the coalition continues to serve the children and families of Polk County, the next generation is given the opportunity to develop the skills they will need to be successful in their future. For more information, give them a call at 863-733-9064 or look them up on the web at www.elcpolk.org.